Bugs are everywhere in Grounded 2, and if you're new to the game or just looking to harvest some of their precious resources, then you'll need to know where to look. My name is Kodiak, this is Legacy Gaming, and today we're sharing the location and how to defeat every bug currently in Grounded 2. Two of the humblest little bugs you'll find in Grounded 2 are the Aphids and Weevils, which you might remember from the first game. These little bugs can be found everywhere in Brook Hollow Park, and the best way to locate them is to listen. Both bugs have an audible sound cue. The aphid makes a sort of chirping, chattering sound, and the weevil sounds like an old man grumbling to pigeons. Both bugs are excellent sources of raw meat, and if you want to take this to the next level, you can create a weevil farm, which looks something like this. By placing mushrooms on the central platform, weevils will casually fall into the pit, ready for you to harvest. Aphids, on the other hand, are a bit trickier to farm as they'll run up a nearby blade of grass once they spot you. Either way, both bugs are great if you need food in a pinch. Mites are back and Grounded, and they're found everywhere in Brook Hollow Park. These little red buggers can be found practically everywhere in the park, but they're primarily found lurking in the trenches that you'll navigate throughout the entire map. These bugs deal next to no damage, but always travel in packs, which makes them quite annoying, especially if you're already aggroed onto another bug. Either way, their Mite Fuzz and Mite Fangs are an essential item even as you progress much further into the game, so don't sleep on harvesting these resources every time you encounter a mite. While not difficult to kill, mites are weak to stabbing damage. Scattered throughout Brook Hollow Park are small ponds, many of which we've marked on the west side of the map for you. These spots are perfect for clay, something we talk about in our OP resources video, but they're also home to gnats and sometimes mosquitoes. Gnats are a small flying insect that provide crafting resources and raw meat, and at each pond you'll find at least two, if not more, of these little buggers. They're harmless, and while tricky to take down because of their erratic movement, they won't fight back. On the other hand, mosquitoes, well, they are back, and they are just as terrible as ever. Just like in the original Grounded, these are flying insects that will quickly dart around and attack you at blistering speed. Mosquitoes are resistant to smashing attacks while weak to both fresh and slashing attacks. Found throughout Brook Hollow Park are two bugs you might remember from the first game. Larvae are small, hostile bugs that hang out practically everywhere in the park, but particularly in the trenches that you'll find throughout the map. These play a much more prominent role than they did in the first game, and are one of the first enemy bugs you'll encounter when playing Grounded 2. Grubs also make their return, and once again you'll need to dig them up from underground. As you're exploring, you'll see patches of disturbed dirt moving atop the ground. Interacting with it and digging with your shovel will reveal a grub, but occasionally a larva will ambush you instead. Listen for the sound cues. If the rustling is louder than usual, it's most likely a larva lurking below. Larvae are resistant to smashing attacks while weak to slashing attacks. In a few key areas throughout Brook Hollow Park, you'll find anthills, which take you deep underground into the lair of the mostly harmless red ants. Just like in the first game, red worker ants are passive, unless attacked, and you'll often find them scurrying around various parts of Brook Hollow Park, carrying back bits of food. Unlike the backyard, the park is filled with a number of billy dogs and apples, and you'll almost always find a few ants nearby hauling back food to their nest. If you decide to venture into an anthill, you'll run into red soldier ants, which are hostile unless you're riding the new red soldier ant buggy, in which case they're friendly, so long as you're mounted and not trying to steal a red soldier ant egg. Ant parts are an incredibly valuable resource, especially early on. Once analyzed, you'll unlock a number of essential items. Both worker and soldier ants are weak to stabbing and spicy damage, with their eyes being a weak point. However, the soldier ant is resistant to slashing damage. Gentle giants that roam Brook Hollow Park, ladybugs can be found wandering throughout most sections of the map, but almost always alone. Here are a few locations around our base in the central part of Brook Hollow you might find ladybugs. These solitary creatures, when provoked, can withstand an insane amount of punishment, and sometimes can even be provoked by other insects into a fight. They're tanks, and one of their signature moves allows them to retreat into their shell, making standard attacks useless. While in this state, you'll need to use a charged attack to knock them out of their shell so you can continue the onslaught. Ladybugs play an important part in unlocking a powerful early game armor set tailored for the fighter archetype, which is why farming their parts early on is a great idea. Ladybugs are resistant to stabbing and spicy damage, while weak to smashing and fresh damage. Their legs are also a weak point if you hit them with slashing attacks. Stinkbugs are the first rare insect you'll need to track down in Grounded 2, as there's only a handful of locations they spawn. Personally, I like fighting them on the pathway that splits Brook Hollow Park in half, because you don't have to deal with the dense foliage of other parts of the map, but if you're farming for parts, there are other options. Stinkbugs are another returning enemy, and just like in the previous games, use an AoE attack to try and slowly chip away at your health over time, while also physically attacking you. They're certainly a formidable foe, especially in combination with other enemies, so always be cautious when engaging one of these bugs. Stinkbugs are resistant to smashing attacks and weak to both stabbing and fresh attacks. Bombardier Beetles make their triumphant return to Grounded 2, but this time with a slightly retooled bag of tricks. These bugs cast a number of AoE attacks, all of which inflict sizzling damage over time. They're certainly formidable, but you'll need to get comfortable fighting them, as their bombardier parts and specifically boiling glands unlock a number of powerful items, including the Scorching Orb mage weapon, a new addition to Grounded 2. Scattered sporadically across Brook Hollow Park, you can find Bombardier Beetles in these areas, sometimes in pairs, making the farming a bit easier. Bombardiers are resistant to smashing and spicy damage, while being weak to fresh and slashing damage. They also have a weak point on their rump, making that a great place to attack if you can get behind the bug during one of its channeled attacks. One of the new and terrifying enemies in Grounded 2 is the Northern Scorpion. There are 3 variations of this bug, and as you might expect, they can be absolutely frightening if you're caught off guard. I want to focus on the biggest variation of Scorpion because those are much rarer than the smaller variants, and also drop the important Northern Scorpion Stinger item, which you'll need if you want to craft the Glacial Sting, a new mage weapon that deals fresh damage. These larger scorpions can be found in specific locations throughout the park. These bugs don't patrol and are lying in wait, ready to pounce once you're in range. If you need to farm for the other parts for whatever reason, you can find an abundance of scorpions in the ice cream cart, but you will need to have chill-resistant gear and potentially the Blaze and Brew smoothie, depending on how long you plan on staying in that point of interest. Scorpions are all resistant to fresh, slashing, and venom attacks, while being weak to smashing attacks. They also have 2 weak points, the rump and the stinger, making those prime targets to attack. New to Grounded is the Blue Butterfly. This neutral bug starts off passive, but once provoked unleashes a flurry of attacks, including one that can chill you, slowing your movements to a near crawl. Butterflies can only be found in a few spots throughout the park, and they do have a tendency to fly around and land on blades of grass or weeds, so make sure to look up whenever you're farming these, as they're not always in your direct line of sight. Butterfly parts allow you to craft one of the new mage armor sets, so if you or your companions want to lean into that combat archetype, you'll absolutely want to farm these flying beauties. Butterflies are resistant to both smashing and fresh attacks, while being weak to slashing and spicy. While they seem menacing, caterpillars are actually harmless and don't attack in any way. That being said, they have no resistance or weaknesses, but do take a few more attacks to kill than some of the other harmless bugs in the game. These can be found in a number of locations throughout the park, all of which are elevated off the ground. Caterpillars prefer to remain away from the hustle and bustle of the other bugs, which is why you'll find them on tables, tree roots, and other harder to reach places. I should point out that analyzing the caterpillar goop allows you to start crafting blueberry bandages, which is the advanced version of the standard fiber bandage. New to Grounded are garden snails, harmless enemies that slowly move across the ground minding their own business. These can be found throughout Brook Hollow Park in set locations, but they do have a tendency to wander, so you might run into them elsewhere. Garden snails are strange, because at the time of making this video, you can kill a snail with the right technique, but you can't fully harvest them due to the current Tier 2 limitation on your Omni tools. Either way, once attacked, garden snails will retreat into their shell and will be impossible to kill, so you have to approach them one of 2 ways. First, you can kill them with an acorn turret, which deals enough damage quickly to prevent them from retreating into their shell. You can also stun them using a charged attack with a high stun weapon, and then quickly finish them off before the stun wears off. Once killed, you can harvest the snail for its slime and meat, but you can't crack its shell for the fragments until you have access to the Tier 3 upgrade for the Omni Hammer, which will be available at some point during early access. Easily one of the most elusive creatures in Grounded 2, the bee is back and more important than ever. These neutral enemies are often found flying around the map, but occasionally will land in a few set locations throughout Brook Hollow Park. The challenge is really tracking them down and trying to kill them while they're landed. You can take advantage of special pollen arrows, which help ground any flying bug, but honestly, it's just a matter of luck, really, catching them at their spawn points while they're grounded. Bees are an essential enemy to farm because you'll need their fuzz for a number of important recipes. First is the fuzzy armor set, which you'll need if you want to survive the ice cream cart. You'll also need bee fuzz for practically all of the stuffed bugs, which, if you haven't watched our Wish I Knew Sooner tips and tricks video, provides an awesome 15-minute buff that allows you to harvest even more parts from specific bugs. Bees are resistant to smashing damage and weak to slashing and sour damage, a form of attack not currently in the game. Their eyes are also a weak point, so keep that in mind if you want a more efficient kill. A terrifying and deadly new enemy, the cockroach is about as disgusting as you might expect, looming larger than almost every other bug in the game. Roaches are more abundant than you might think, and there are actually a number of locations throughout Brook Hollow Park where you can find them, but if you want a relative concentration of them, head to the fire pit area in the far north by the Melted Army Men, where you can find at least 2 of them. There are 3 variations of roaches, and while they don't deal an absurd amount of damage, the smallest roaches can easily overwhelm even a full group of players in combination with the larger roach, so be wary. Cockroaches are immune to gas, but also resistant to fresh, spicy, and venom attacks with absolutely no weaknesses. They also have a second phase once you kill them initially, which can cause a bit of a panic the first time you fight one of these enemies. Found near almost every major point of interest are spiders, and in Grounded 2, there are 3 variations of Orbweaver spiders, all of which are hostile. The largest variant of these bugs are less common than in the first game, but taking their place are an army of Spiderlings and Orbweaver Juniors, which you'll find practically everywhere. Anytime you see a spider web in the environment, be wary of spiders close by. However, the full-sized Orbweavers are more stationary, and while they do patrol a bit, they generally stick to their set locations, which you can see on the map here. All 3 variants of Orbweavers are resistant to stabbing, fresh, and venom attacks, while weak to spicy attacks. One of the most elusive bugs in all of Grounded 2 is the wolf spider. This big, bad, 8-legged menace can only be found in a few set locations throughout Brook Hollow Park, but also patrols a relatively large area, which can make them hard to track down. These are some of the key locations where you might find a wolf spider, but as you might expect, you'll need to bring a lot of firepower if you want to take one down. Wolf spiders, while formidable, also grant you their parts, which allow you to analyze and unlock the wolf armor set, which is a powerful set of rogue gear. Wolf spiders are resistant to smashing, stabbing, fresh, and venom attacks, while weak to spicy attacks. The most elusive bug in all of Grounded 2 is the praying mantis Nymph, which can only be found in a small handful of locations throughout the park. What was once a boss in the original game is now a formidable enemy in the park that lurks above the ground, ready to pounce if you're silly enough to come within range. Praying mantis are absolute killers, and early on you'll be completely outmatched, possibly even with a full group. However, kill them and analyze their claws gives you the ability to craft the Mantis Blade, a powerful 2-handed weapon and currently one of the strongest in the game. While not exactly accessible, there will come a point where you'll want to farm these bugs for their valuable parts, which is why it's important to know their few set locations. Praying mantis nymphs are resistant to smashing, stabbing, and spicy attacks, while weak to fresh and slashing attacks. Strangely enough, their eyes are also weak to stabbing attacks. So there you have it, every bug in Grounded 2, where to find it, and how to most effectively take them down. If you have any questions about this guide, leave us a comment in the section below, or better yet, join us on Discord where you can reach out to Livid or myself directly. As always, if you appreciate the work that goes into making these videos, do me a solid, hit that thumbs up, and consider subscribing. We'll have more Grounded 2 in your feed soon, so keep it right here, and don't miss a thing. My name is Kodiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching, and play on.